Are all minimalists savior NI? If you want to find out, keep watching. YouTuber and filmmaker Matt D'Avella's claim to fame was with his Netflix documentary called Minimalism, which kind of started around the same time as the minimalist movement and became popular thereafter. Matt's YouTube channel started out with a focus on his minimalist life, but then it kind of quickly moved into videos about productivity and habit creation. We've been practicing typing for the last several years, and more recently we've been typing celebrities and being coached by Shan from Objective Personality. That means that yes, the type revealed in this video has been confirmed by Shan and Dave. We're doing these classes because we want to share our journey from the student's perspective, but also show you where we're struggling and where we're making progress slowly.
As always, let's start our process with talking about our biases. So I've been watching Matt on and off for a couple of years, and I think at some point I had a bias that he was lead NE, but after we typed Elizabeth Phillips a few months ago, I thought maybe he's lead NI instead, because their channels are so similar in their topic and their presentation, and his channel also seems kind of narrow, similar to hers. So that's why I thought, maybe rather lead NI. Otherwise, I thought he was Savior Sleep to Hell, also introvert overall, probably Savior DI, and maybe possibly also a thinker, but I wasn't sure about that at all.
Matt is someone that I've watched on YouTube for quite a while, and I really appreciated his filmmaking skills and I guess the level of detail that he actually applies to his videos. I initially went in with the bias that he was some kind of IJ, simply because his channel does have like a huge focus on minimalism and productivity, which, as we've seen with Ali Abdaal, you know, it's something that IJs like to focus on. And visually, he looked like he might have NI. He kind of had like the big round mopey eyes, and he visually reminded me a bit of our friend Uzair. If you know him, you'll know what we mean.
All right, let's start first with the observer decider coin. So what is Matt really stuck on? What does he keep processing? In the following clip, Matt talks about how he and his brother got sued for $7 million, I think back in 2008, for making a parody rap video on YouTube about a grocery store where he worked at.
Did I ever tell you about the time I got sued?
No.
Yeah. So I got sued for $7 million. It's very scary. And I think like because of that, I'm much more conservative and thoughtful about certain deals and making sure I'm using licensed music and make sure the clips that I use. I mean, I'm an anxious wreck to begin with, but I try to be a little bit more cautious about the videos I put out because I just don't want to be sued again. But I got sued in 2008 or so. I was a couple years into college, and I made a parody rap video, as you do. So I'm not going to tell the long story, but the main points are I got sued for $7 million for making a parody rap video about the produce department of the grocery store I worked at. So this was like 2 years after YouTube started. YouTube started in 2006. So there were like these parody rap videos that were very viral at the time. They were all over the place. And I was like, this is it. This is my shot. It's funny how now I'm a YouTuber when like I wanted to be a YouTuber like way back when. And so, you know, my brother and I put this video together, and it was inappropriate, and we're talking about peeing on produce. Like don't come up to us acting all rude because we won't be afraid to pee in your food.
Oh my God.
Really highbrow.
And then did you put the grocery store's name in the video?
We didn't.
Is that what the problem was?
We didn't, but my brother had a hat on, but it was like SD. You know, you couldn't tell, but he had the hat on of the logo of the grocery store. And somebody complained from our store because the video only got 1,000 views at the time. And then somebody complained, and then it went up to like HQ. They found out about it, and they decided instead of doing a cease and desist, they were going to sue us for $7 million.
So when Mel tells the story, like he laughs about it, he tells it in a funny way. I would say he has processed it, but in the beginning of this clip, he emphasizes how much it had impacted him and how careful he is now to avoid getting sued again, and how he picks everything out carefully, that he follows all the rules, and he calls himself an anxious wreck. The way he tells it or speaks about it in the video, you might be not sure if he's joking or not, but when you get to know him a bit better, he really is an anxious wreck about these things. These things come up again and again and again, and it's definitely an issue that he's generally stuck on. But now let's look at something that Matt isn't stuck on.
Did you get any like bad feedback when you made the video?
I was gonna say no, but then my wife Natalie, does she
look at the comments?
She's sorted by newest.
Oh no, Natalie.
Yeah, and then she's like, bullshit, total sellout. And because like the top comments were everybody's just so kind and nice, and like it didn't faze me, but I was also like, but you don't have to read them. You know, it doesn't hurt me, but I'm like, what's the point? It's not going to make me happier. But I knew I made the decision. I had a strong inclination, an idea that people were going to be supportive, and they were. So it's awesome, and I'm working and learning, and this is something that's very new for me. I've only done one sponsorship. I've turned on monetization, but I'm hoping that it's it's pretty clearly going to work out at this point where I'm going to be able to hire people. I'm going to be able to have an editor.
It helps you build, and it helps you
take the pressure off myself too.
So in this video, he talks about YouTube comments, and he has the same vibe that he has in this other story, like really light and joking. But it is pretty clear from the story that he was never stuck on these mean comments in the first place. Like, he didn't enjoy them, of course. No one does. This is just human. But he could just brush it off easily. It wasn't a big deal. He didn't take it personally. But if you're a decider, stuff like that can take you out, maybe for a while, maybe for a couple of days or even longer. But that didn't happen to Matt.
So the next coin we're going to look at is OE versus OI. Now, this is a coin that Felix and I had to battle it out over because we were both coming from different ends. So let's watch this clip and see, is this actually OE? Is he wanting new? Is he wanting variety? Or is it OI? Is he wanting to cover the same topics over and over again? And is he comfortable doing that?
I just was only talking about what I knew and what I was an expert in. Yep. And then I was like, this is like, I only got two things. I've got filmmaking and I've got minimalism. And like, that's like, and like the minimalism, I'm like, am I an expert? I'm not Marie Kondo, but I'm like, I know enough to talk about it. And I'm like, okay, but I need to branch out, and I'm getting a little bit bored talking about these same things. Yeah. So I was like, what if instead of being an expert, I was an experimenter? What if I just poke the box and I just start playing around with things, and that's where the experiments came from. Like cold showers for 30 days. Like, I'm not an expert in cold showers. I don't know who is. I'm not Wim Hof, right? But I can actually explore this and I can learn about it. And I think that, to me, has made the process more enjoyable. And it's, again, taken the pressure off to be, like, the expert in everything.
So initially, Matt talks about only making content that he felt like he knew enough about to make videos on. So that was minimalism and filmmaking. But interestingly enough, he doesn't consider himself an expert, which if you're a savvy consume, you always feel like there is more information to take in on a subject. And he does talk about being an expert a couple of times there, or feeling like he's not an expert. But he also does say that he very quickly got bored of these topics and then wanted to branch out into other things, and he calls them experiments. So then he talks about experimenting with cold showers and all sorts of other things, which you'll see on his YouTube channel. So this here is OE. He was uncomfortable with the OI. He was bored with the OI of doing the same two topics on his YouTube channel, and he then wanted to branch out into other things, and this was exciting to him. Now, because that last clip and explanation was a little bit brief, the next one we're going to look at is SI versus NI planning, and how does Matt feel about planning?
Like, I just felt so good about getting that far out, and then when I came back from vacation, all my runway was gone. And I'm like, I had to start over, and I was just so bummed out about it, and it really, like, it was hard to restart again. So I've started to pull that pressure back a little bit on myself and say, you know what if instead of going 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and just trying to always get ahead, what if I just created in the moment? And then I was just week to week, or maybe 2 weeks most, and not feeling like I always had to get ahead. And that's helped so much with my sanity.
Yeah, there's a certain beauty to that too, right? I think there's like this preoccupation with getting ahead to the point where you'll never have to work again. Maybe that's the fantasy. But there's a certain beauty to just knowing you have to get up and do your craft every day.
Yeah, and I do think that that's something that we kind of like idolize in our head, is this idea of I can just sit back and relax and I won't have to do anything. I think there is an element of it that in the short term, it takes pressure off yourself, at least to have 1 or 2 weeks ahead. Yeah. But I do really like releasing more closer to the moment. Like, I just finished up a video 2 days ago and I release it today. And that, to me, I feel closer to the project. I feel closer to the feedback that it gets, and I can understand how people are responding to it more. But when you're 4 or 6 weeks ahead, it gets to the point where you're just kind of like pushing it out there. You know what I mean? It's more like a factory and less of an art.
So at the start, we hear Matt talking about how planning 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks out actually stressed him out. It created more anxiety for him, and his preference and what actually works better for him is to release in the moment, because that way he feels closer to the project. He gets that kind of instant feedback, which sounds more like OE, and again, not like OI, and again, not like NI. The planning in advance is what's stressing him out. He can't do that. And if you have SI like I do, you're just not thinking usually that far ahead. So this rather sounds more like it's NE and SI rather than NI and SE.
Like, what is your planning process for all of your different channels like, and how far in advance is it?
Yeah, so I usually kind of put together like a business strategy plan around the beginning of the year. That's usually when it feels right. Okay. But I'll usually kind of recalibrate 6 months into the year. But I basically kind of draw up a notes document on my Mac, and I just work through what are the main channels and the mediums that I want to focus on. I used to in the past focus on growth metrics, but we were talking about this before where it's like you could always just keep wanting more and more and more. Yeah. And like generally I get pretty happy with like, I'm totally content with where I'm at right now with like numbers. So these days I don't include that, but it's just like kind of what do I want to get out of it? What are my expectations for the kind of content I want to create and the kind of message that I want to put out there? What are like the topics I want to talk about? And it's usually no more than 1 page to kind of, this is just kind of the jump start the direction of where things are going to go.
Okay. And when you sit down to plan or when you sit down to take notes, is it always on your Mac? Is it always in the Notes app?
Yeah. So I use the Notes app on Mac and I have it on my phone. A lot of times, you know, when I'm out, I'll pop it open and I'll take a couple of notes down.
And a little bit more on the planning. When Matt does plan, he will plan for the year, as he says, but then he recalibrates 6 months into the year. And his plan is just like a one-pager, which he uses to kind of jumpstart the direction for the rest of the year. But it seems like he updates as he goes. And additionally, he likes to talk about the specific sensory that he uses in order to kind of help keep his plans in order. So it's more like, I've kind of got this plan, this idea, but what's more important is actually the specific sensory, the habits, the tools that I use. The routines, yeah, in order to kind of make that plan happen. Where NI planning will have the end goal in mind, and that's what they start with, and then they will kind of force the sensory to fit as they work backwards to make sure that that end goal is met. The NE kind of needs some sort of SI as a starting point to, as Matt said, to jumpstart forward. And then what is most important are those kind of SI routines that help them reach their goal. Even though the goal might change, they might keep updating as they go. And if you have OE, that's just how you like it. Yeah. That's just what you do. So that's what we're seeing is the difference between NI planning and SI planning.
I said in the beginning that I had a slight bias that Matt might be a thinger, but in our process, Holly nudged me at some point and said, hey, I think he might rather be FI. And then I looked at clips like this and saw it everywhere.
And when you're planning out your day, is it the night before? Is it like a week in advance? How are you planning out individual days?
Yeah, when I'm planning my days, it varies. You know, I'm pretty type A,
okay,
but there's a part of me that's also kind of flexible and needs to go with things in the moment and like what I feel like doing. So, I mean, I could have a task that says like, write next week's video. But then when I wake up in the morning, like I try and I'm just like, I just don't like, I'm not inspired right now. You know what? I'd rather right now just start like editing my video that's going live this week and let me just work through that a little bit to feel a little bit productive, to kind of build that momentum of work. Yeah. It's still on my to-do list and I'll probably get to it, but at least I could, it's kind of, I'm willing to be flexible in the moment if I have to.
So what you're saying is, as one of YouTube's productivity gurus, you don't stick to your plan.
I don't. No.
This is a scandal.
Yeah, 100%. You throw the plan out the window. Like once you get, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. I think Mike Tyson said that.
Yep.
So
that was actually Michael Scott. Mike Tyson.
Michael Scott said that, but you know, yeah, I was most of the time I would say I stick to it.
Okay, first of all, you see a lot more OE in this clip from Matt. He is asked, so how do you plan? And he starts with, I don't know, it varies. And then at the end of the clip, he even says, oh yeah, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, quoting another EP, Mike Tyson. So as a productivity guru, he doesn't actually stick to his plans. But what does he do? He's more spontaneous and he uses awareness of his feelings to figure out what is good in the moment. And he really leverages that to work better, to feel better, and produce better content. Because if he feels that he's not in the mood for script writing, he doesn't do it. Like, why would he? So he's able to swap that around depending on his state. And he uses that consciously as a tool. So he's probably rather a feeler and not a thinker. In comparison, and we're speaking from experience here, thinkers often tend to suppress their emotions or be not even fully conscious of their emotions and just push through and do what they said they would do anyway. Also too often to their own detriment and to detriment of whatever they're working on.
They might not even realize that they actually have a preference for what they want to do.
Yeah. We've seen how Matt uses emotions in a way to help him with work, but how does Matt use emotions to handle conflict?
How do you agree to disagree sometimes and get through those arguments without necessarily agreeing all the time?
I don't think there's anything wrong with conflict.
Yeah.
Where there might be a problem is if you have problems with resolving that conflict. I think that's the real telltale sign of like whether or not you're in a healthy or unhealthy relationship, is how you're able to resolve, move forward, learn from it, allow each person to feel heard and understood. Because you will absolutely have conflict, and it's fine. You're two different people and you're allowed to express your different opinions, and occasionally those will clash.
I like the cool down method. Not always a fan of the cool down method, but I like taking a step away from the situation to like let my ego simmer down, and then I can go back and apologize, which often happens.
I feel abandoned when you do that.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk things out. So then when Matt just like shuts down and then like goes to another room, then I'm kind of like, oh, I feel disposed of.
Yeah.
Like I'm disposable.
So that's something that we work through with how we work through our conflicts. So I try to kind of
Man up.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it. I can't say it.
We are probably seeing multiple things here in this clip. So first of all, Matt is again in conflict aware of his emotions, but how does he deal with it? He wants to process them on his own. He wants to retract first, which is a tendency that we've seen from people who have FI in general. And with people with severe FI, they're really aware of their emotions, and they kind of do that actively and take responsibility of this bad feeling state. People who have demon FI might need to do that, but they might not be even aware that their state is fucked up, and they might just suppress it and not actually deal with that. Yeah. The other thing that we're seeing here is probably Xavier sleep. Yeah. So he wants to really process on his own. He doesn't want to engage. He really retracts and wants to be resolved before he can talk it out with the other person. And his partner, whose type we don't know, but seems much more extroverted than he is, and is probably Xavier play, needs this kind of engagement that he actively avoids.
The next key piece we want to look at is social type, because this actually played a big part in Matt D'Avella's OP type and kind of contributed to some of the contradictions that we were seeing when we were trying to type him. So as we know, the number threes need certainty, and the number threes are often seen as the most IJ-like, which is one of the contributing factors to Matt appearing more OI to us. So even after we saw Matt's need for freedom in a savior state, and then also the specific sensory control, it kind of left us wondering what his social type was.
Jason mentioned Ali Abdaal. I'm sure you've heard of him before, but if you haven't, he's one of the most successful self-development creators on the internet. Ali and I started making YouTube videos around the same time. We both made a YouTube course around the same time, and we both started scaling our businesses a few months apart. Except we both ended up in very different places. Ali still runs a team with 10 employees, and I'm going back to being a solo creator again. Based on my own experience, I had to wonder whether he was genuinely happy running such a large team. So I asked him.
Okay, cool. We've got audio running through here and recording over there, so we should be good. Are you happier now than when you were doing things by yourself? Yeah, massively. It's so nice to work with a team, and it's actually way more fun than the alternative, which was, for the first 2 years of the journey, doing it by myself. And for me, part of the point of doing a business like this is to have fun, and I realized that I much prefer working with people, but like working with people in a way that I can still do my creative work, and then I work with people when I want to, rather than feeling I had to do like regular one-on-ones and check-ins and team meetings and all that kind of stuff. For me, scaling the business has been very worth it, but I have not enjoyed the process of hiring and managing employees. The place I've gotten to now is that I don't actually manage anyone. The only person I manage is Angus, who is my general manager. And I don't really manage him. He's like the CEO of the company, so he manages himself. But Angus manages everyone else in the team. So this is amazing because now I can spend all of my time focusing on creating content, which is the thing that I enjoy, reading, writing, learning, and teaching. And I spend literally 0% of my time, maybe like 1% of my time, on things that look like management. So we're now at a point many years into this where all that stuff is off of my calendar, which makes the whole process of running this business feel really good.
Okay, so Ali figured out a way to enjoy having a team, but I don't think I ever could. To be fair, I got to work with some incredibly talented people who became really great friends. There was so much that I loved about collaborating, mentoring, and working with them. It was truly an exciting time as we built the team. But I found out that when you scale your business, a lot of other unintended things scale. Things like emails, tasks, obligations, expenses, calls, problems, difficult conversations, meetings, stress. So much stress.
Last week I got on about 25 phone calls. This week you can see I've got about 9 or 10.
It took a good year after our big hiring sprint before the excitement of it all started to fade and was replaced by dread.
This video here is a really great example of how number threes can go wrong and end up burning themselves out if they kind of choose to start a business but don't actually have the right expectations or I guess the right end goal in mind
for them. And if you want to know a little bit more about this, Felix has got an article coming out with this video that talks a little bit more about this in detail. But in this clip that we just watched, Matt is interviewing Ali Abdel, who we have previously typed as a number 2, and this is kind of around how Matt ended up having to downsize his business because it ended up becoming too much for him. So Matt talks about the start of his business being both terrifying and exciting, which, you know, is something that happens when you're starting something and you're thinking, this is what I really want to do. I really love this. But he said that the moment that changed for him was when he logged into a team meeting and he saw 8 people staring back at him. They were all employees, and he suddenly realized that he was responsible for all of them. And it was at that point that he realized that he had made the mistake of turning something that he loved into a job. And by doing so, he actually wasn't able to focus on what he loved because he was then suddenly responsible for all this other stuff. And he couldn't get rid of it because he had to do it. He had no choice. And when Ali was asked the question of whether he was now happier since having employees and a team to work with, his response was, yeah, I am. But he did say that, sure, he doesn't enjoy doing the management stuff, but he's fortunately now in a position where he is able to kind of outsource that to someone else, so he can actually focus on the things that he enjoys doing. For the generalists, it kind of seems like they understand that they need to kind of do all the things that they don't want to do or don't necessarily enjoy doing if it means having the autonomy and freedom to focus on the things that they like. It's kind of like Jocko's motto of discipline equals freedom. Now, unfortunately for the specialists, and especially if they are EPs who are driven by the human need of freedom, and not being able to focus on the things that they enjoy and having to do all these other things actually leaves them feeling dread and ultimately burnt out, which is what we're seeing with Matt. And they can easily fall into the trap of having the goal of working less, but then they end up discovering that they actually have to work more than ever, and the quality of their specialty or their craft actually suffers, which makes them miserable. Matt's full type is audio, NE-FI, consume, sleep, blast, and he's play last, and the number 3. I only hinted a little bit that he's savior sleep. We didn't want to talk about it too much because we thought this is like one of the most obvious parts in him, that he loves his routines, he does repetitive things, he does the same, he talks about the same topics again and again, so you really see the sleep and how he works, what he puts out, you see it on his face. He's not blast last, he doesn't need to be kicked to talk with the interviewers, he has a really nice flow, a really nice back and forth, he produces a lot, but he really struggles with keeping up the momentum. So with having this balance between the energy between working and resting, that's what he struggles with. And then actively engaging others. We really wanted to focus more about the apparent contradictions of his type, because for an EP, he's really a weird EP for 2 reasons. He has feminine NE at the top, but double activated masculine SI at the bottom. So you really see when you look for it, a lot of NE of like, oh, like I like the variety, I don't like to plan, but you see the SI and the need for control so much. He gets weird about it, he talks about it a lot, he actually does it, but in a demon state. But that's what's hard to make sense of it. Like, what is this? It's obviously an observer, but is it an EP or an IJ? Because he is such a kind of strong glass lizard. And the other thing is that he's a number 3. So he has a lot of anxiety around uncertainty. He has a craving for certainty. He constantly processes it. Yep. And this again makes him feel so IJ-like. But if you carefully look at Savior and Demon State and play your chess moves right, that you see, okay, he's a number 3, but then he still wants the variety and the control is actually in the Demon State, then you can figure it out. But it was really hard for us to get like all these kinds of pieces right. But let's end just with a funny clip of how he again processes uncertainty, but actually makes fun of IJs.
This is what I like to call the axis of uncertainty. When faced with uncertainty, we have very limited options with what we can do and how we can react. You've got those who are underprepared, those who are overprepared, and everywhere in between, and people who react emotionally with a range from panic to calm. Up here, we've got those who are panicked and underprepared. It's your classic deer in headlights. You recognize that there's a problem, that you should probably do something, but you're just so damn scared that you fail to take any kind of action. They're usually the first people to get eaten by zombies. I mostly feel bad for these people. And down here, we've got those who are underprepared and calm. At a time like this, your parents are probably down here. You might find yourself down here for a few reasons. Maybe you've become desensitized by the media always fear-mongering that when a real crisis happens, you don't believe them. Maybe you trust the wrong sources entirely. Anyway, not a good place to be. It's not a great place to be because you're not thinking critically, and when it's really important to take action, it's either too late or you fail to do so. Zombies are gonna eat these people as well. And up here, a lethal combination of panic and over-preparedness. These are the people who go out and buy a year-long supply of toilet paper. I don't blame them really because panic is known to cause massive bouts of diarrhea. But when you clear out all the hand sanitizer and canned soup, you're being a dick. It's both selfish and short-sighted. They're so panicked that they aren't rational enough to prepare mindfully, and as a result, they too get eaten by zombies. Don't be that person. Finally, down in this lower right quadrant is really where you want to be, say right around here. You're cautious, you've taken the necessary steps to prepare, you've got enough non-perishable food and essential medical supplies to last you a few weeks, and you remain calm knowing that you've done everything you possibly can. And as a result, you'll probably be able to fight off the zombies.